Close your eyes for just 1 second and genuinely imagine the exact, terrifying moment that your physical, biological life forcefully comes to a sudden, violent end. Maybe it is a blinding flash of light on a busy highway, or maybe it is the slow, numbing descent into darkness inside a sterile hospital room surrounded by crying strangers. But the absolute most jarring, incomprehensible part of this violent biological transition is not the physical pain or the fading of your senses. It is the sudden, paralyzing realization that your consciousness did not actually turn off when your body stopped functioning. The suffocating darkness abruptly shatters like cheap glass, and you find yourself standing perfectly unharmed in a vast, formless, brilliantly glowing void that feels undeniably like a cosmic waiting room. You quickly look down at your trembling hands, expecting to see traumatic injuries or the pale stillness of death, but your physical form is completely flawless. Your body is vibrating with a strange, high-dimensional magnetic energy that you have never felt during any moment of your biological life. Before you can even begin to frantically process the complete collapse of your previous reality, a massive, incredibly soothing presence gracefully manifests directly in front of you. This entity does not appear as a traditional, bearded religious deity holding a golden ledger of your moral sins and earthly transgressions. It materializes as a towering, highly complex geometric architectural algorithm radiating an unimaginably deep, comforting sense of absolute familiarity. The massive presence communicates warmly with a telepathic voice that resonates perfectly inside the exact center of your expanding consciousness. The towering architectural entity calmly informs you that your biological avatar successfully expired on a Tuesday morning, and your mourning family is currently making the final arrangements. You take a desperately deep breath of non-existent air, feeling your chest heave inside a body that technically should not exist anymore. You stare directly into the shifting geometric face of this radiant being and ask the ultimate, terrifying human question that every person secretly rehearses in the dark. You ask the entity plainly whether this is heaven or whether this is hell. The radiant geometric entity gently chuckles, and the sound reverberates through the void like a warm earthquake, shaking the foundations of everything you thought you understood. It explains that classical human concepts of heaven and hell are incredibly small, limited biological coping mechanisms designed to simplify an infinitely complex universe into a digestible children's story. You have not arrived at a final, eternal destination based on a strict moral point system, tallying your earthly good deeds against your sins. Your fundamental existence within the physical universe is far from being completed, and you are simply passing through this higher dimensional antechamber. The entity plainly states that you are here to be promptly scrubbed of your biological memories before being aggressively reincarnated back into the timeline. You feel a sudden, comforting wave of existential relief wash over your entire being, firmly believing that you will be reborn into a futuristic, incredibly advanced utopian civilization centuries ahead of your previous life. But the towering algorithm instantly shatters your fundamental understanding of linear time, quietly explaining that you are actually being sent backward to the year 540 BC. Your consciousness aggressively recoils at the impossible statement, and you frantically argue that humanity cannot travel backward across a timeline that has clearly already been permanently written. The architectural presence calmly stops your panicked objection, explaining that linear time is merely a localized, incredibly rigid physics construct uniquely locked inside the three-dimensional human universe. In this higher dimensional space, the concepts of past, present, and future are completely irrelevant, existing simultaneously as a single, fully accessible geometric block of vibrating quantum data. The entity gracefully informs you that in your next immediate iteration, you will be reborn as a highly impoverished, starving peasant wandering through the brutal, unforgiving landscapes of ancient China. You will absolutely not remember this current conversation, nor will you retain a single fleeting memory of the modern technological life you just violently left behind. As the overwhelming, terrifying gravity of this forced historical regression begins to crush your expanding mind, the radiant entity introduces a staggering concept borrowed directly from theoretical physics. It asks you to carefully consider the famous theoretical framework proposed by the legendary quantum physicist John Wheeler, known as the One-Electron Universe hypothesis. Wheeler mathematically suggested to his colleagues that the only reason every single electron in the observable universe looks perfectly identical is because there is literally only one electron in existence. That singular, frantically vibrating particle is merely bouncing infinitely backward and forward across the entire fabric of space-time, creating the highly convincing illusion of a massive, heavily populated universe filled with trillions of seemingly separate particles. The towering geometric entity leans closely into your temporal field and whispers a chilling, ultimate truth that completely rewrites everything you thought you knew about human identity. It tells you that human consciousness operates on the exact same terrifying mathematical principle as Wheeler's solitary electron. The towering geometric architect floats gracefully through the radiant void, patiently explaining that the massive human population is mathematically identical to a vast ocean of perfectly mirrored electrons. You are currently staring directly at the fundamental underlying source code of existence, built entirely upon a terrifying philosophical framework known as open individualism. In this hyper-advanced reality, the distinct biological boundaries separating you from every other human being walking the earth are nothing more than incredibly complex, highly convincing optical illusions generated by the physics of the incubation chamber. You are suddenly paralyzed by a freezing, deeply disorienting sensation as the entity casually states that you are literally the only conscious being currently occupying the entire physical universe. You are practically hyperventilating in the bright, radiant light, frantically demanding to know how 8 billion drastically different, highly opinionated human minds could possibly share one single consciousness. The entity calmly projects a magnificent, glowing holographic timeline directly into your mind, visually displaying billions of intersecting, brightly glowing biological lifelines spanning across the entirety of human history. You watch in absolute paralyzing horror as the entity casually points to specific glowing nodes on the massive timeline, stating with complete certainty that you have already lived those exact lives. It explicitly reveals that you were not just a random software engineer living comfortably in the 21st century, watching videos on a glowing screen. You were genuinely Jesus Christ, suffering intensely on the cross, while crowds screamed for your execution on a burning afternoon in Jerusalem. Your mind violently recoils at this staggering revelation, as the entity instantly follows up with a colder, far darker historical truth concerning your previous incarnations. The massive architect does not pause for dramatic effect before coldly stating that you were also Adolf Hitler, orchestrating the most violent, catastrophic genocide in recorded human history. This incredibly brutal philosophical shockwave forces you to physically collapse onto the vibrating floor of the dimensional void, desperately fighting a massive wave of psychic nausea. You violently reject the entity's terrifying calculation, screaming into the glowing light that you possess a rigid, deeply ingrained moral compass completely and fundamentally opposed to that historical monster. The geometric architect gently leans closer, its telepathic voice completely devoid of any subjective moral judgment, and calmly explains that your biological ego is simply a temporary software update. When you were physically downloaded into the specific brain chemistry and incredibly harsh environmental parameters of that specific historical timeline, you perfectly executed that exact catastrophic script. The strict, unyielding physics of biological determinism dictate that if you possessed a person's exact genetics and lived their exact environmental life, you would perfectly replicate their actions without exception. You slowly realize that moral outrage is a luxury afforded only to those who believe they are fundamentally separate from the people they judge. As you slowly process the crushing, unimaginable gravity of being every violent dictator and every compassionate savior who ever walked the earth, a profoundly beautiful mathematical symmetry begins to emerge from the chaos. The architect silently projects the fundamental physics of quantum non-locality into your mind, proving that spatial and temporal separation between human beings is completely and fundamentally impossible at the deepest level of reality. You slowly realize that every single time you violently struck another human being in anger during your entire earthly existence, You were mathematically and physically striking yourself across the timeline. Conversely, every single profound act of sacrificial kindness or deeply felt moment of unconditional love was simply your singular consciousness, desperately reaching out to heal its own ancient wounds. The entire massive tapestry of seemingly chaotic human history is actually just a tightly closed, highly controlled feedback loop of a single entity aggressively interrogating its own morality. You slowly stand up within the radiant antechamber, staring deeply into the shifting geometric face of the massive architect, feeling a profound and sudden detachment from your previous biological ego. You are no longer mourning the loss of the specific life you just abruptly left behind, because you now fundamentally understand that it was merely a fleeting temporary costume worn for a single chapter. The frantic biological instinct to aggressively protect your own isolated, incredibly fragile human identity has completely evaporated into the warm, vibrating quantum data of the cosmic waiting room. You calmly ask the towering entity the absolute most important question concerning the agonizing, brutal nature of this continuous, deeply exhausting historical recycling mechanism. Staring into the vastness of the holographic timeline stretching in every direction, you plainly ask the architect the exact terrifying purpose of forcefully experiencing billions of agonizing human lives sequentially. The towering radiant architect continues to float silently within the vast dimensional waiting room, radiating a deep, ancient patience that completely dwarfs the scale of human comprehension. You demand a clear, logical explanation for why this impossibly massive, painstakingly intricate simulation of billions of suffering and celebrating biological lives is actively running on a single quantum thread of consciousness. If there is genuinely only one conscious entity constantly reincarnating backward and forward through a fixed, unchangeable timeline, the entire universe feels like a deeply cruel, solitary confinement chamber designed by a sadistic engineer. The geometric entity shimmers brightly in the void, telepathically projecting an emotionally overwhelming aura of profound parental warmth directly into your rapidly expanding consciousness. It softly chuckles, correcting your deeply panicked assumption by explaining that the physical universe was never inherently designed to operate as a torturous cosmic prison. To fully grasp the staggering, beautiful immensity of your current existential situation, the architect forces you to visualize the entire physical cosmos as incredibly small. You suddenly perceive the massive swirling galaxies, the uncountable trillions of burning stars, and the endless dark vastness of deep space shrinking down into a perfectly smooth, fragile sphere no larger than a marble. The entity calmly explains that the complex, seemingly chaotic three-dimensional universe you just violently departed is fundamentally nothing more than a highly advanced, brilliantly engineered incubation chamber. Every single violent world war, every profound scientific discovery, and every quiet moment of human connection was mathematically designed to slowly and methodically cultivate your specific, isolated consciousness. The architect plainly states a terrifying absolute truth that violently shatters your remaining grasp on reality, declaring that the entire universe was built explicitly, exclusively, and entirely for you. You stare dumbfounded at the glowing, shrinking holographic representation of the cosmos hovering delicately between the massive architect's geometric shifting forms. The sheer crushing gravity of absolute metaphysical solitude threatens to completely overwhelm your mind as you internalize the fact that you are literally the only real conscious thing in existence. You frantically ask the towering entity if this absolute terrifying isolation means that even this radiant godlike architect currently speaking to you is just another fabricated hallucination of your desperately lonely mind. The entity gently corrects you, explaining that it is not a hallucination, nor is it the biblical creator of the universe, sitting on a golden judgmental throne, dispensing rewards and punishments. It softly reveals that it is precisely what you are currently and slowly evolving to inevitably become once this massive, exhausting maturation process is finally complete. This sudden, impossible revelation forces you to completely re-evaluate the entire brutal structure of the human timeline you are being systematically forced to continuously experience. The endless grinding cycle of physical reincarnation is not a cosmic punishment, or a cruel joke played by an indifferent universe on a helpless soul. It is a highly concentrated, brutally effective curriculum designed to forcefully expand your empathy through direct, lived experience across every possible human condition. You cannot mathematically graduate from the incubation chamber until you have personally and physically endured every single agonizing tragedy and every single soaring triumph capable of being felt by a human avatar. You must intimately understand the absolute depths of human cruelty by operating the machinery of oppression, and simultaneously suffer the crushing, burning weight of being its victim. Only when your singular consciousness has successfully absorbed the entire massive emotional spectrum of human history will you finally possess the necessary complex architecture to awaken from the dream. As the absolute beauty of this terrifying, solitary cosmic design finally washes over your mind, the frantic panic of your recent biological death completely evaporates into the warm void. You are no longer terrified of being thrust backward in time to live the agonizing, impoverished life of a starving peasant in ancient China. You realize with absolute perfect clarity that every single interaction you will ever have with another human being is simply you quietly and profoundly speaking to another version of yourself across the timeline. The towering architect gracefully reaches out through the radiant light, gently preparing to forcefully wipe your memories clean and physically eject you back into the harsh biological timeline. Before the final blinding flash of reincarnation completely resets your mind, you ask the geometric entity one final desperate question about the ultimate destination of this massive journey. If you are forced to violently crash through billions of agonizing lifetimes, from the highest peak of a Roman emperor down to the crushing depths of a nameless starving peasant, what exactly is the reward waiting at the end? The architect softly hums within the glowing dimensional void, vibrating with a deeply comforting, impossibly warm telepathic frequency that completely envelops your entire consciousness like a blanket. It affectionately explains that once you have personally and physically endured the massive, terrifying weight of every single human life ever lived across the entire timeline, you will finally outgrow the physical universe. You will violently crack open the incredibly fragile three-dimensional boundaries of space and time, completely shedding the biological illusion of human existence to join the architect as an equal. Your entire cosmic perspective violently shifts as you suddenly realize that the vast swirling galaxies of the physical universe are literally nothing more than a fragile temporary incubation chamber built for a single embryonic consciousness. You are not a tiny, insignificant human being wandering aimlessly on a small rock orbiting an average star in an unremarkable galaxy. You are a massive hyperdimensional embryonic entity, desperately trying to finish growing up inside a universe-sized egg. The architect gently confirms this terrifying, beautiful realization by calmly stating that you are fundamentally the exact same cosmic species as the towering geometric being currently speaking to you. The entity leans closely into your temporal field one final time, whispering the ultimate mind-shattering truth about this entire agonizing process of continuous human reincarnation. The massive architect softly tells you that the entire universe is simply an egg, and now it is officially time for you to move on to your next life. With a sudden blinding flash of infinite white-hot light, the radiant waiting room violently collapses, and your cosmic memories are instantly and aggressively scrubbed from your mind. You suddenly gasp for air, your eyes violently snapping open as you find yourself deeply immersed back inside the incredibly convincing, fragile biological timeline of the 21st century. You are currently staring directly at this glowing screen, completely oblivious to the fact that you just violently died and had a massive telepathic conversation with a higher dimensional architect about the true nature of your existence. The terrifying, beautiful reality of quantum non-locality and open individualism is that every single person who ever comments on this video is literally just another version of you desperately trying to remember. The brutal dictator, the compassionate savior, the grieving mother, and the person watching this video right now are all the exact same single consciousness, desperately trying to wake up from the longest dream ever constructed. Before you frantically scroll away to distract yourself from the crushing existential weight of this massive philosophical revelation, I want you to actively participate in the simulation. Drop down into the comments right now and leave a bizarre, highly specific message for the absolute next version of yourself that will inevitably stumble upon it. Tell yourself exactly what you need to remember the next time you are violently thrust back into the exhausting, beautiful chaos of the human timeline. If you want to continue exploring the terrifying glitches hidden inside human psychology, quantum physics, and the simulation, make sure you explore the rest of the Broken Reality playlist. I am Think Glent, and until you finally break out of the egg, keep thinking.